So, hey y'all. So long time no part two. I guess I need to explain myself. I created the ANTM Iceberg randomly in 2021 after those were kind of like a trend at the time, and then decided to make it into a video. And I just watched it back recently, and I was like, oh shit, I was kind of cooking here with the editing and shit, and I want to attempt to apologize for the long delay on part two. But keeping it a buck 5,000, I didn't think it was well received at the time. I was kind of self-critical in that era of my life, but looking back, I was kind of living. I was like, oh shit, this is kind of nice. The English language is so much fun, and the definition of soon is so wide and expansive. And I did say that part two was coming soon, so here I am fulfilling my promise and finishing out the ANTM Iceberg. I just want to preface this by saying that I actually never typed out part two back then. Getting this information is not just like a full one, two, three. Like it's like you got to do research. So like I'm having to do research again on this. So most of this is my general knowledge in 2025. So a lot of this I'm actually rediscovering alongside all of you. Despite the fact that if I really had to do a thesis on Top Model for my capstone, I could have because I know this show like the back of my fucking hand. But some of this was really surprising, so I've decided to make up the delay to all of you by doing my big one. So get your scuba gear on, bitches, and do not touch them water wings because we are diving deep. We begin our treacherous descent halfway down the ocean to Takara was cut because she couldn't fit the clothes in Japan. So this is a pretty understandable theory. Takara from Cycle 3 was and is a fan favorite for a myriad of reasons. Takara has an unbelievable amount of charisma and magnetic energy that season that radiated from the first moment we saw her when she ran her ass into that audition room and yelled at the judges that she was Takara, she was big, black, beautiful, and loving it. She's 180 pounds and carrying it well. She was such a necessary addition to Cycle 3 as a narrator and side commentary character. She told it like it was in confessionals, and her friendship with Yaya and emotional support for Kelly are two of my favorite underlooked aspects of what makes Cycle 3 so fucking great. But underneath the surface, as much of an unbreakable ray of confidence and personality as she so seemed, Takara wasn't Superwoman as you'd expect. She was human. A woman in her 20s harboring some layers of insecurity. And in episode 8, Takara had a huge breakdown about feeling forced to be strong for her family and growing up in a difficult household, taking care of everyone but herself, and she was exhausted by it. This was the first time we really saw Takara's confident, bubbly persona crack, and it was heartbreaking to watch. This moment was a big foreshadowing into the overarching narrative of Takara's entire storyline, which is, can a plus-size woman break the mold? Takara's experience would climax in a pretty frustrating way. At the Ford alter ego photo shoot, Takara was giving styling that was far less expensive than her thinner counterparts. She jokingly complained to Michelle, the stylist, that she looked like she worked at Home Depot, and she did. And she asked Takara if she thinks that she can get a rack of clothes to fit her. Crazy thought, considering that, that's her job, but whatever. Then the pinch. Takara gets accidentally clipped in the back by industrial-sized clippers by Michelle while trying to make her work uniform fit her, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. Takara becomes completely deflated after feeling like an afterthought with the styling because of her size. A spectacle of this magnitude had production reasonably believed that this moment would eventually break Takara. And it did. We never really see Takara back to her normal spirit for the rest of her 2 remaining episodes. This would become their justification to cut her. Takara gets eliminated in the next episode, episode 9, because the judges believe that she's lost her spirit and personality. This was 1 episode before the girls went overseas to Tokyo. The week before models get cut overseas is kind of important for deciding who will fill or fit into the international market they're traveling to, and they put much more emphasis on its importance in later seasons. The fashion industry in the early 2000s was not catering to plus size models, to say the least, especially not in Tokyo. They just didn't have the market for it. So if Takara did advance, the show would have had to outsource clothing for her in an industry that did not cater to diverse sizes at the time. Tyra was a champion of changing the industry in terms of diversity based on her own experiences with fluctuating body image, and it ties into the fact that Tyra wanted to keep Takara that week, but she was actually outvoted, as revealed in Cycle 16. If ANTM had been committed to inclusivity as Tyra purported, they could have made accommodations, but they framed it as a lack of confidence, which looks much better as a goodbye and send off for Takara than the fact that had she gone to Tokyo, her fears of not being able to break the mold and difficulty in breaking that glass ceiling would have been far more realized and a lot more crushing and a lot more humiliating. But it just only makes Takara's eventual 6-page spread in Italian Vogue so much sweeter. The Cycle 20's runway show gender split proved that Corey was meant to go home. So this cornball ass Bali version of The Notebook was the best way that I could describe this very cheesy fashion film final runway show for Cycle 20. The theme was a love triangle between a female model, Jordan, and two male models, Marvin and Corey. Marvin was the good guy, definitely not following the narrative, and Corey was the bad guy slash abuser. This film led up to the climax of there being a male and female pairing at the end. Even though Corey had just gotten eliminated in third place moments before this show in a really fucked up situation, he was still expected to perform in this runway as part of the storyline. At one point, Corey lays low while Jordan just takes pictures over him in a rather humiliating fashion. Either way, the structure of this hints that the show always anticipated ending with one man and one woman in the end. I mean, you could probably predict this with the theme of the season being guys versus girls, but now let's be very real. Jordan was winning this season. Jordan was winning this season. The sky is blue, grass is green. This is not America's Next Top Best Friend, and Jordan was going to win Cycle 20 of America's Next Top Model, and we knew this by the time of her paint shot. It was definitely going to happen. I did not particularly care for Corey as a character this season. He actually annoyed the fuck out of me. But this was so cruel to him, especially with him being expected to participate in a runway show minutes after you've just been eliminated. The show had pretty much set up a man versus a woman at the end from the beginning, and if this were to be the case, Marvin should have gotten the boot at top 3 bare minimum, especially since stacking portfolios up side to side, Corey kind of crushes Marvin. Then also, Corey did better in the guest shoot prior to this round, no matter what Rob Evans says. Corey himself said in an exit interview that once he heard the prize was a guest campaign, he said, quote, "When she said guess, I was like, there's no way I'm winning this. There was no model that looked like I did. And I wouldn't be surprised if that probably had something to do with it." All season, Corey walked a line as proudly androgynous, but received lots of criticism from fucking Rob Evans, who is nobody, for not being masculine enough. This became a running theme where Rob would applaud Corey in this condescending fashion if he just butched up a pose, to the point where Tyra would have to rush to defend Corey. By the time it was clear that this perspective tainted Rob's perception of Corey, and Corey's elimination probably reflected this bias. The very next season showed very clear evidence on the show's part to influence eliminations based on an intended outcome. Corey never came out and directly accused the show of any wrongdoing, and instead chose to focus on his pride in staying true to his identity despite his pressure being put on him to change. The theory does hold considerable weight, and I side with it being an intentional and cruel elimination of Corey, who really should have been the runner-up to Jordan, but it really didn't matter which guy you set on, because Jordan was getting that coin. Revlon and Wilhelmina hated Adrian and cheated her out of her prizes. Adrian Curry was the OG inaugural winner of Top Model back in Cycle 1. She has since lost her day of mind, but back in 2003, her prize package included a contract with Wilhelmina Models, a cosmetics contract with Revlon, and a spread in Marie Claire. However, Adrian has publicly come out and said that she never got the full benefits of these rewards, and it soured her reputation with the show for years. I know y'all remember back in Cycle 8 when they did the winners and then they never put Adrian in it. That shit was so gaggy when it first came out. Actually, no, Cycle 7. So gaggy. Let's start with Revlon. According to Adrian, Revlon never intended to feature the winner in any public advertising. When she met with Revlon executives, she was told, quote, they never planned on using the winner for any ads. Instead, Revlon gave her a one-time job. She was paid to model makeup for a room of company executives, which is essentially like a test or a demonstration, but not a public campaign. Adrian said she earned $15,000 for this, which fulfilled the literal contract, but gave her no national exposure. She was disappointed, but she was grateful to, at least she got $15,000 out of it. However, it was revealed by Adrian that the payment was either delayed or was withheld. Whatever the case may be, she didn't get her coin. So she did a 3-day gig and a paycheck never came. So Revlon blamed Wilhelmina, which was Adrian's agency. And then Wilhelmina blamed the top model producers. And then Wilhelmina told Adrian that she would have to take legal action in order to get paid, which would probably end up costing more money in legal fees than the sum itself, which would be making it fruitless. In 2017, Adrian joked that it would be nice to get my $15,000 someday, meaning she never received the money. Revlon never made a public comment about it, but Adrian never got used in any campaigns. So by Cycle 2, Revlon was switched up for Sephora, and then one cycle later, CoverGirl, and the rest is history. Now on to Wilhelmina Model Management. According to Adrian, she did sign with them, but they never truly supported her, and in fact, they actively attempted to undermine her career. The reason was a behind-the-scenes rift between Wilhelmina and the top model producers. ANTM dropped Wilhelmina and went with IMG Model Management for Cycle 2. And this made Wilhelmina take their anger out on Adrian. And she was allegedly told outright that they didn't want her to be successful in any way to spite top model. So the agency put their focus on Elise, the third placer of Cycle 1, instead, who had signed with Wilhelmina instead. They provided no castings, no go-sees, and essentially froze out opportunities. So they basically benched Adrian to spite top model. Adrian begged the producers and Tyra to help her out and get her out of her contract or even just intervene. And according to Adrian, crickets. Phone calls got ignored. I mean, Adrian even tried to seek out suing Wilhelmina to break free, but Elise allegedly tipped off the agency about her plans and thwarted that effort. So Adrian remained stuck until the contract expired, actively destroying any momentum in a modeling career that just never materialized. Tyra originally planned to save Tiffany during the double elimination to shake her up until she saw her reaction. So this is a theory that can never be outright proven unless it would come from Tyra's mouth itself, which it never would, but here's where this one comes from. The context of this one is the infamous "we were all rooting for you" meltdown of Cycle 4. At Episode 7's judging test, Tiffany famously gave up during the teleprompter challenge and gave an unbelievably wild performance. The idea is that during Rebecca and Tiffany's double elimination, Tyra intentionally intended to save Tiffany and give her a second chance by pulling a dramatic last-minute save, but when Tiffany reacted very casually and indifferent to it, Tyra pivoted to her legendary blow-up instead. Now let's dissect this. Number 1, Tyra has a history of playing savior. Like throughout the show, she would often take it upon herself to be this mentor who rescued struggling girls, and she was known to give people a second chance as a wake-up call. Saving Tiffany in a dramatic fashion it would track. Number two, unlike most eliminations where one girl is called and saved by getting her photo, Tyra pulls out a blank photo with nothing under it. It's been theorized that the container that Tyra's holding the photos in, behind that front sheet with the logo on it, is actually Tiffany's photo, and that Tyra was going to give it to her and keep her. Tyra's seen fumbling around with the photos while Rebecca and Tiffany are saying their goodbyes. So my hole in this is that it would have been unbelievably fucked up and cruel if Tyra gave Tiffany back her picture to remain in the competition with Rebecca still in the room, but Tyra's done worse things than that. Three, Rebecca, while she's in tears, Tiffany was pretty indifferent and took it all in stride because her heart clearly wasn't in it anymore, which pissed Tyra off. So number four, after initially speaking to her in a calm, measured tone, Tyra exploded on Tiffany's ass in a way that was unbelievably disproportionate to the moment itself. For every point Tyra thought that she had, Tiffany had a rather level-headed retort. She was giving up because her heart wasn't in it anymore. But Tyra instead responded to that with guilt-tripping Tiffany, and it was far more vicious than it was shown on TV, but more on that later. This woman who had quit numerous business endeavors is now scolding this 23-year-old for feeling like this experience was too much for her. Tyra was unreasonably upset, and it seemed almost like she had a redemption arc planned for her, but was so blindsided by her reaction that it turned it into public ridicule. She would go on to do a far more passive-aggressive and condescending version of this 5 cycles later. To most, Cycle 4 seems like a season where Tiffany was their pre-select winner. She fit the bill of an overcoming adversity Cinderella story. Tyra was probably looking for Tiffany to at least go far, but when she saw how unaffected she seemed, she pivoted to making an example of her instead. Tiffany's acceptance of defeat came off to Tyra as defeatist. And it challenged that narrative where these girls are so vicious and desperate, rabid dogs for a modeling contract, and should cry, beg, and fight and kill to be there. Tiffany disrupted that narrative, so then Tyra lashed out on her to make an example out of her through spectacle. It's a classic case of reality TV manipulation. Tyra wanted an emotional, dramatic moment out of redemption. Tiffany didn't want to give it to her, so if she had to lose her Cinderella, she would squeeze juice out of it for TV's sake. The Cinderella narrative would then pivot to Naima, and the rest is history. Mel Rose was the intended winner of Cycle 7, not Carrie D, until 17 and CoverGirl. So this one is really more speculative, but follow me here. In Cycle 7, Mel Rose was easily the most consistent contestant. Her setup first week bottom 2 aside, she racked up multiple challenge wins. By contrast, Carrie D had a much rockier and shakier journey with a fucked up foundation. On paper, Mel Rose's portfolio and challenge performances were stronger, and even Carrie D admitted that Mel Rose was the best competitor in terms of sheer drive and talent. Mel Rose was desperate to be mixed at somehow. She wanted it more than anyone else, and y'all know Tyra lives for that desperation. Despite Mel Rose's edge, the finale emphasized different factors. The final judging showed the judges were split. They praised Mel Rose's professionalism on the runway after Carrie D ruined her dress on accident, but they adored Carrie D's final CoverGirl shot, and it is an all-timer. Mel Rose was criticized for seeming too clinical or cerebral, or wanting to seem too perfect and lacking warmth, while Carrie D was lauded for her exquisite CoverGirl photo and huge personality, even if her runway was much weaker. This was a heel turn because up to that point, Mel Rose had consistently been on top, but suddenly her perfection was seen as a negative. Carrie D had just received some massive criticisms in Spain. Her infamous stick in the ass comment with Nigel almost got her eliminated at top 5, and her battle with hypothermia and almost dying landed her in the bottom again at top 4. So in comparison, Mel Rose was getting bouquets thrown at her every week. By this point in the show, a desirability to be relatable to young girls became a tenet for winning the show, not just being a great model, particularly with 17 magazine and CoverGirl as top prizes, which had a bit of a teen girl market. Carrie D did absolutely blow Mel Rose away with that absolutely fucking insane CoverGirl shot, and her 17 cover was much more suited for the brand than Mel Rose, who was in her mid-20s and photographed older than she was at times. Had this been Cycle Warner 2, I genuinely believe they would have crowned Mel Rose. But in this current era that the show was airing in, the edit and judging in the finale steered the focus towards Carrie D's charm and away from Mel Rose's track record, suggesting a possible last-minute shift in priority from pure performance and technical ability to personality, marketability, and fitting a brand. Ooh, we got a hot one right here. Celia was tricked by producers into calling out Talia. Now, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible about this one because I did not fucks with Talia, and I was very team Celia on this when it aired, but here we go. During Cycle 12, after Courtney was eliminated, Celia, who was close to Courtney, wasn't happy about her cut. Neither was I. So as soon as the saved bottom 2 contestant Sandra took her place with the other safe girls, Celia took her spot standing next to Courtney to address Tyra and explain that it was important to address that Talia had repeatedly stated that she didn't want to be in the competition anymore, and on numerous occasions arguing that it would be unfair to keep someone in who wanted to quit over someone who did not want to be there. Just for reference, Talia had just received Best Photo. She just got first call out, which kind of made it seem even more like a kick in the face. The timing of this was just not the best. Tyra gives Celia the iciest, most evil stare possible, saying that it was more unfair that Celia was saying this and not Talia. So Tyra then tells Celia to, quote, take her place, back with the other safe girls. Tyra said this was one of the most non-beautiful things she'd seen on the show, and Celia was almost narrowly eliminated the week after, accusing Celia of messing with another girl's money, vaguely relating it to how Naomi Campbell allegedly did to her during her modeling career. Now, this would seem like a pretty piece of shit thing for Celia to do, right? It's fucked up. Yeah, it'd be terrible if it wasn't outright encouraged by her to do so by production. That's right. Production set Celia's ass up. In a post-show interview, Celia revealed a crucial behind-the-scenes piece of tea. Before she spoke up, Tyra essentially invited the girls to voice any house tensions. According to Celia, they didn't show this, but Tyra was like, the floor is open. We don't know what goes on in the house, so if you have anything to say it now. The rest is history. Celia felt this was the green light and very foolishly believed that her decision would be supported. But it was a trap. Cutting that initial prompt from Tyra makes it seem like Celia did this completely unprompted, completely unprovoked, purely out of retaliation for Courtney going home. So according to Celia, Talia had been complaining about wanting to go home for days, and she even expected for her to go that week. Foe stated in an interview that no one knew Celia was going to do this, and it felt like a leap of faith motivated by loyalty to Courtney than anything else. Talia stated her first reaction was to punch Celia in the face. Ooh. But afterward felt like Celia was just expressing her opinion. Celia stated in exit interviews that the show made girls feel like puppets at the mercy of editors, and that they were worn down and very easily manipulatable. It's very clear this was the producers and Tyra deliberately engineering drama based off of existing tensions in the house, thus creating this Celia versus Talia drama the next episode, which leads to the confrontation at panel, then the subsequent fight the next day at the house between Allison, Celia, and Natalie versus Amina, Tiana, and Talia, an accusation of Tiana that Allison was plotting with Celia to get Talia eliminated, which leads to Natalie standing up for the pair, and then the stupid argument between an unflappable Natalie and an unhinged Amina who decides to express her ability to spell six-letter words as an attempt of intimidation. A hilarious shot of the two women involved in the initial conversation standing next to each other on the stairs watching everyone else fight, and then Celia almost getting eliminated at panel. That is all one episode. And just like that, Tyra created an entire episode's narrative simply because Celia was unbelievably naive and trusted production. While this was incredibly unwise of Celia to do from a reality TV standpoint, and in no way was this ever going to amount to her getting anything other than a searing villains edit, I would have said that shit too. I'm right with Celia, because Talia was so annoying to watch, dog. I can only imagine how hell it was to have her inside the house with them. Celia, you get your 10s from me, sister. Had to be edited down after Nipplegate at Super Bowl 04. So everyone knows the whole "you had sex" controversy from Cycle 2. The top 4 girls were in Italy for their overseas destination and invited some male models back to the house for some fun, Yeah, it's been 2 months with nothing but women, Male attention was scarce and they got a whiff of testosterone and just had to do their big one. April had a confessional. She was like, you drop a banana in with some monkeys and they're going to tear the peels off. That shit was crazy. Shandy was completely getting it on with one of them in the hot tub, and it was implied that they had sex off camera. But time out. Shandy, you have a boyfriend. So she then comes back to her senses and down from Nirvana, runs to the phone to call her boyfriend Eric and inform him that she cheated on him, and the rest is unintentionally hilarious. It's actually the way he says it. It's seared into my brain. I can't say when I'm referring to this, I cannot say sex. I have to say sax because of. Anyways, turns out this one is It's absolutely true. So the Janet Jackson Super Bowl halftime controversy where her nipple was revealed live on TV sent shockwaves through the American media in 2004. The FCC was pretty much on everybody's ass after that point, and UPN, the network that was airing ANTM at the time, didn't want those lashings brought to their skin. So Cycle 2 was airing at the time of Nipplegate 04. In fact, the incident occurred in February 2004, and the episode with Shandy Sack Session, that aired on March 6, 2004. This comes directly from the Jay's chat that was done during lockdown. According to Jay Manuel's recollection, the initial cut of Shandy's affair was steamier and far more explicit, and that production only edited the footage to be more tame and suggestive because of the backlash of Nipplegate 04. We only see Shandy and the male model kissing in the hot tub, going to bed. The male model leaves, and then Shandy's on the floor crying and telling her boyfriend she had sex. So yes, the rumor does hold weight. Nipplegate created a forced chilling effect on American television, reflecting the heightened caution of broadcast standards at the time, which reflected onto Top Model as well. Shandy herself has never confirmed the lengths of the encounter, as is her right. And side note, I went and rewatched Cycle 2 for the first time in probably 15 years, and there's a scene where Tyra has cappuccinos with the top 4 at night after the nude shoot in Italy, and in a moment of vulnerability, Shandy straight up asks Tyra if she's ever cheated on anyone before, and it's a very real and raw and natural conversation where Tyra offers Shandy some advice that she's not a bad person and how much of a lesson it was in being human by not giving into carnal desires in a moment of weakness. It's a very rarely talked about scene that I've actually never seen before, and I've been watching for probably 20 years. It's one of Tyra's best moments, honestly. Brooke was eliminated on the night of her high school graduation. So there's absolutely no rumor or extra bells and whistles to this. It's just a really fucked up thing to do to an 18-year-old. So in this episode of Cycle 7, Brooke gets a care package with her high school diploma and items congratulating her for graduating. Clearly, Brooke graduated early in order to compete on the show from high school, but the ceremony coincided with filming for the show, so she had to miss it in order to compete. This was Brooke's centric point of the episode. At elimination, Brooke falls into the bottom two with Eugenia, who had rode the struggle bus pretty semi-regularly up to that point, and purely for potential's sake, Eugenia was spared, which means Brooke had to go home on the night of her high school graduation. That's right. The exact night of Brookes Elimination was the exact night she was meant to walk across the stage at her high school graduation. So rightfully so, this 18-year-old girl sobbed at the crushing defeat of losing this competition she gave up her final moments of high school for, and also the fact that she'll never also get to experience walking across the stage of her high school graduation. Two very heavy losses in the same night. But did you think Tyra was going to allow this 18-year-old girl to express grief over what are probably the first two major losses of her life? Of course not. ANTM is the pinnacle of life, liberty, and the pursuit of a modeling contract. So Tyra had to remind this 18-year-old girl before she heads back to the loft to go pack her shit and get out that she needs to be grateful for this experience, because Brooke, do you know how many girls would want to be in your place right now, getting booted on TV and experiencing devastating loss in front of the fucking country and losing out on one of the only major milestones anyone your age can experience? Do you feel that? In order to avoid getting verbally berated for not subscribing to the Cinderella narrative like Tiffany did, Brooke lies and says there's no place she'd rather be than right here, getting my dreams smashed and dirt kicked on my diploma by a retired supermodel. Absolutely. I salute this young woman for experiencing that and doing so on camera. It's one of the most bizarre and unsympathetic things that you could do to a young woman in a situation like this. Tyra really said, damn your psyche and that diploma. Kick rocks. And Brooke was supposed to be like, yes, thank you for rejecting me. Like, where did we lose the plot? Tyra wanted to cut Britney, but was outvoted 3-1. So let me set the stage for you. On cycle 16, Alexandria was kinda self-righteous, annoying, high maintenance, controlling, sort of a bitch. Definitely the villain of the season. No cap, I liked watching her. Like, she was one of my favorites, but I'm sure she was probably a pain to live with. And on episode 7 of Cycle 16 for the Ford Warriors in Pink Challenge, Alexandria won the challenge, and deservedly so. But surprise, surprise, you get a car, bling bling, bitches is mad. So for all of Alexandria's unlikable moments, of which she did have many, this was a rather genuine moment of her winning something she genuinely earned. And these girls could not take her. Backstage, the girls were seething. Ooh, they could not stand that Alex won that shit. So they start publicly out loud, and by they I mean Britney, publicly out loud talking cold cast shit about Alex, with everybody crowded around Britney. Alex bucks up and says, I can hear you, across the room. And then Britney loudmouth screams, I don't care if you can hear me. You should have gone home last week over Monique. And then it starts this big public spat with Alex, who was pretty calm about the situation, but she also wasn't backing down, and I live for that. Like, she really stood up to her, and I had to give, you kind of have to give tens to both Alex and Britney in this moment, despite the fact that one looks far better than the other for the TV of it all. I give credit to Alex for standing up for herself and refusing to allow someone to shit talk her in front of her face, without checking that shit, and I do respect Britney for being as loud as possible. Being wrong, at least she stood 10 toes and 2 souls down deep in shit, unlike the rest of the girls who cowered it and did stank faces. Brit Brat went off. Problem is, they were on a set, aka a job, aka a gig, aka a judge is right around the corner and can hear this entire thing because that's how loud Britney was being. At one point, Alex points in the direction of Nigel off screen and says, "The judges are the only ones that matters," which leads us to fast forward to panel, where during Alex's critique, Nigel commends her for taking the spit talk in stride and calls out Britney for being unprofessional. Britney says that we, because she actually can't stand on her own 2 feet, we believe you chose the wrong spokesperson. Some petty drama in the house and being a bit self righteous and condescending does not disqualify you from being a spokesperson for cancer, Britney. Jesus. Tyra then grabs the mic and says, "Now I'm gonna talk," and correctly gags Britney by turning it around and saying, "Britney can't clock Alexandria and say that she's not a good role model and then do exactly what she's claiming that Alex is doing." She chastises Britney for being unprofessional and being unsportsmanlike. Britney has a panic attack, walks off set. We already talked about how Britney was unbelievably sabotaged photographically this round, but in truth, Tyra was actually dead set on eliminating Britney for this outburst. Like, she actually wanted to kick her ass off of the show. Tyra has a consistency in really not liking when girls mess with other girls' money, as evidenced by almost eliminating Celia for calling out Talia in Cycle 12, which we found out was based on her past alleged experiences with Naomi Campbell trying to stop her bag early in her career. But the other judges disagreed. Tyra wanted to Tyra wanted to send Britney home, but Nigel, Andre Leon Talley, and the guest judge all voted to keep her in a 3-1 vote. This is not gossip. This is not a rumor. This is straight up in the episode. When Britney survived the bottom two, Tyra explicitly told her that if it was up to Tyra, Britney would have gone home instead of Michaela. Tyra even lamented during deliberation that she'd been outnumbered and likened it to Takara's elimination in Cycle 3, where she was also outvoted to send Takara home when she wanted to keep her around. According to Michaela in an exit interview, Tyra told her that she, quote, wished Michaela were staying instead of Britney, which is like, whoa. Tyra wanted Britney's ass out of there. Tyra was ready to ship Britney back to that Pennsylvania trailer park in a box with no fragile sticker. Britney herself apologized afterward that she had to regain Tyra's trust due to the incident, and in the next episode, Britney apologizes to Tyra as well as Alexandria, which both accepted. Britney would have a sizable personality shift after seeing how close she was to getting the boot. She would continue to improve photographically and ended up winning the season. I'm going to be honest, as completely unlikable and bratish and unsportsmanlike as Britney comes off in this whole debacle, it would have been so unbelievably terrible if Britney went home this week after having one of the strongest portfolios up to this point. And the fact that they sabotaged her photo at judging is wild. Shaking the shit out of her and spooking her into almost going home humbled the hell out of her, and she would have rightfully gone on to win the season. XIF Data spoiled the entire social media cycle's elimination orders. So for those of you who are ancient reality TV junkies such as myself, there used to be this website called RTV Games, and may it rest in peace. It was the holy mecca in terms of places to go as the hub of reality TV competition fandoms are concerned, especially for Top Model, huge part of my teen years. During the social media cycles of Top Model, which were cycles 19, 20, and 21, fans could vote on photo shoots as they were airing to determine a fan score, which would affect their scores at judging. This was unprecedented for Top Model, as we got to see photo shoots happening in real time as they were being shot, as they were filming, as well as the fact that all of the eliminated contestants were still competing week to week, as we at home had no idea who was eliminated or not. Or did we? Shows like Drag Race have Nancy Drews and spoilers and tea spillers and leakers who completely clock aspects of the show during filming right down to the elimination orders almost exactly months before the show even airs. In Drag Race season, since probably about season 10, we pretty much know who makes the finale 3 months before the show airs. But we're talking this starting maybe since about 2018. This takes us back to 2013. Now, this legendary motherfucker by the name of Soup Mod became the ultimate Nancy Drew of the ANTM universe, as each photo was posted by the show for the fan voting. Soup Mod extracted XIF data from each of the photos. XIF stands for Exchangeable Image File Format, which is the metadata embedded in a digital photo. This can include things like the camera settings, location data if enabled, but most importantly, date and time a photo was taken. If you upload a photo without extracting that XIF data, the person who sees it can extract timestamps. SoupMod, who is a moderator on RTBG, extracted the XIF data, and by analyzing timestamps, he could tell which contestants lasted longer based on when their photos were taken. If a model's photo was dated as being much earlier than the other ones, it strongly suggested that they were eliminated at that point, and that they were the comeback contestants. The elimination order for Cycle 20 posted by SoupMod, and I can confirm because I was there, turned out to be exactly correct, and revealed the finalists well before the cycle had aired. And if I'm not mistaken, he even confirmed that Alexandria and Jeremy were the two comeback contestants that season. He was able to deduce it down to the fact that Corey, Jordan, and Marvin were the final three, and since the guest shoot was the last one before the end of the voting, we could only predict that based on the portfolio up to that point, the winner was probably going to be Jordan. After Cycle 20, ANTM started stripping that XIF data from the images for Cycle 21, which was its last social media voted cycle. They also delayed and rearranged uploads to make obvious timelines, and even started to use photos and shoots that were not even voted for the fans at all. SoupMod's XIF data leak is by far the most infamous ANTM spoiler, exposing an entire cycle's elimination order before the season would even premiere. It demonstrated that a simple metadata analysis could crack the code, forcing production teams to tighten their shit up in the future. I'll never forget in his signature during his posts on that forum during the season, it was like this crudely done shot, fade out GIF of the models' makeovers photos, one by one, and they would click off. They all went off the screen until only Jordan was left. And that order was exactly spot on. It's kind of gaggy. The accuracy of Drag Race spoilers are almost normal at this point, but for 2013, spoiling an entire season's elimination order this accurately months before it aired felt like showing an iPhone to a sick Victorian child. Amanda from Cycle 3 wasn't on the list in the casting and got cut, but her speech about being legally blind made producers change their minds. I want to give a shout out to you/Andre D-Lock for adding full explanation and legs to this conspiracy. Everything I'm about to say is on the back of his post because that shit gagged me when I read it. The explanation and the screenshots are all credited to them. Around the time I made the original ANTM Iceberg, a rumor was circulating around the Reddit that Amanda from Cycle 3 was actually not originally in the cast. She didn't even make the top 20. This seems almost unbelievable in hindsight due to the fact that Amanda was not only an integral character in a cycle where you had like 5 main characters with probably the most depth to their personality of any cycle, Amanda was integral to the very first episode. In fact, Amanda's the person that the very first episode title is referring to, the girl with the secret. I went back and watched the Cycle 3 casting episode, and Amanda is almost a completely like that entire episode. Amanda is like kind of like the main character of it. Amanda's season-long narrative was set up with one of the strongest chunks of airtime out of anybody except of Eva, of course, From the insane, unhinged revelation that she was getting impregnated when the plane hit the first tower on 9/11, to the focus on her eyes and her audition, where there were almost no negative critiques for her, and even gagged at the body of Amanda that she had post birth of a child conceived to the hour on September 11th, Amanda seemed very set up as a clear cast contestant. Then Michelle Mock stated that only 20 girls will make it to the cast, moving to the semifinal round of cuts. We get a very brief screenshot of the list that has all the names on it of the 20 girls, and if you zoom in, you can somewhat make out the names that probably matches up to look like this. Where's Amanda? There's 20 names on this list, and Amanda is clearly missing from it. But when they roll through the names of the girls when showing us the top 20, we can clearly see Amanda's name behind the girls' faces. So, how did Amanda get on the list but then get off the list? There had to have been two lists where Amanda was originally off of it but then added in later. That means Amanda's name wasn't on the original list. This leads to the theory that Amanda, who was clearly very emotional, was not originally even cast or even made it to semifinals, which is crazy. Amanda is slam out the house in terms of like initial beauty, especially in the caliber of girls this season. It seems almost unbelievable, which is why I blew it off at first. But then Amanda goes up to give a speech to the girls saying that she was, quote, sorry for those who hadn't made it and so happy for those that had made it, and proceeds to give the iconic revelation, not the 9/11 conception, but revealing that she is legally blind and will be about 30 when she goes completely blind. It genuinely does sound like a goodbye speech, which could be easily edited around it in the event that Amanda had advanced on second thought, after this iconic moment, which is the theory. In the next scene where the girls have to do a quick camera photo shoot with Mr. J, most of the girls are seen waiting in the same room. We see at least 17 of the girls in this scene, then Takara, and then Mary. But weirdly enough, we never see Amanda in this room, which is just a thought. She could have been in the corner of the room, who knows? But Amanda did participate in the same photo shoot that the other girls did. But when the photos are cascaded across the screen, we only see 20 girls, including Amanda. Turns out if you go back to the original list, which doesn't include Amanda, in this cascaded group of photos, the girl that's missing is Sarah, the pacifistic girl that got into it with Tiffany for retaliating against that stank hoe that poured that beer on her weave. You know, the one in the back seat that says she didn't condone violence, and then Tiffany retorted, that's great, Martin Luther King, but I'm with Malcolm. I still reference to that to this day when shit's getting active. I'll say, I'm with Malcolm. Like, that stuck with me. Turns out there wasn't 21 girls. Amanda was never added to the 20. Amanda replaced Sarah. Gab. This got confirmed by the fact that when it's time for Tyra to call the 14 girls into the final cast and Eva is the last one called, the girls that remain are Mary, Jennifer, W, Leah, Q, Rachel, Christina, and Narjas. No Sarah. The real question comes in with, did production actually know about Amanda's disability before this? And based on Michelle's lack of a reaction from Amanda revealing it, it would seem that they kind of already knew. In photo shoots, there would have been, some explanation why Amanda can't see directly in front of her. If a photographer is asking her to look in certain directions, it would come up at some point. Amanda would reveal in her interview with Oliver that production was aware of her condition and pushed her to do the speech. My personal conclusion, due to this theory, right, is that Amanda was originally not cast. She did the speech to reveal her disability as a genuine goodbye. Sarah left. Amanda took her place. And the rest is history. Victoria from Cycle 19 went back to America after the waterfall shoot because she wasn't getting along with the cast. So Victoria from Cycle 19 got eliminated at the final six, and while most contestants would return home, like, when it's time to go home, like when the season's over, this was the first social media voted cycle, which means all the contestants would also compete in the photo shoots with the regular contestants who are still in the game in order to be voted on by the public. Victoria would do the final five waterfalls photo shoot. But then the final two photo shoots of the cycle, the quality of her photos were noticeably different and like clearly photoshopped compared to everyone else. It almost seems like green screened. This is because Victoria asked to leave Jamaica and return home after the waterfall shoot. According to behind the scenes reports, Victoria negotiated a contract clause that allowed her to go home as soon as she was cut, rather than remain in Jamaica and stay sequestered with the other eliminated girls. This decision was purely made by Victoria. If you watch Cycle 19, you probably remember how unhinged Victoria was in terms of missing her mom and feeling emotionally strained and isolated from the other girls. This was a very big did she pass the psyche valve situation, because I really don't think she was psychologically cleared to compete in this competition, but that's just me. Tension with the other girls probably contributed to this decision, and contestants openly voiced concern about Victoria's eating habits halfway through the season and her health during judging. Since she no longer had a dog in the fight to win the competition, it's understandable that Victoria wanted out as soon as possible. Apparently, since Victoria refused to stay and do the last two shoots, production hurriedly shot her last two photos in a single day before she flew home. And instead of shooting on location with the others in Jamaica, Victoria was photographed in front of a white studio background, and later the image was digitally edited into the proper background of each shot. There's clearly a very green screen quality to these shots, and the Dream Come True one is very airbrushed, and that tracks with the theory, in my opinion. She wasn't in any of the behind the scenes comeback series webisodes or the final runway, which confirmed that Victoria did indeed end her experience after the waterfall shoot and return back home. Producers made the girl scream when Tyra comes out and reshoots it if it's not loud enough. Uh, yeah. So most of multiple contestants have come out and stated that they were coached or at least asked to redo takes if their reactions to Tyra's entrances were not loud enough. Not necessarily staged in the sense of being scripted, but manipulated for maximum effect. Like a trained Pavlov's dog experiment, but with classical conditioning between a $100,000 contract and some model from the 90s. I will say it just kind of became, I think, fun for them. Like, I think in the beginning of the show, they were not like this, but as the show kind of became more of a caricature of itself, in like, you're looking like towards like 3, 4, 5, 6, you could see that it became more exaggerated, and it just became part of the fun of Top Model. It was very campy. So I think this was just kind of part of it and just part of the show. It was just like one of those like ritualistic things. Like you see Tyra, you start fucking screaming. Janice passed. Sorry. Janice passed out drunk during a I'm so sorry. Janice passed out drunk during a Cycle 3 panel and they kept filming. According to the Jay's chat back on Instagram Live during lockdown, yes, this one is actually true. Apparently, according to a comment from someone who watched the chat, Jay said that Janice fell asleep and or passed out right before judging filmed started rolling, and they just went with it. They not putting her in the shot and editing in comments like they were happening then, but were actually later when Janice woke up. I would imagine that this was exaggerative if it did not come from the Jays themselves. So, yes, this one shockingly is true. Cycle 16 rejectees, real or fake? In Cycle 16, Tyra orchestrated one of the most shocking twists during filming, and this is where ANTM started to begin its quick descent into hell during what was, in my opinion, its last good season. One of ANTM's best seasonal aspects is the casting episode. Auditions, semi-finalists galore. It was a strong way to show us the beginning stages of each girl's journey, and for its winners, it's usually the scene that truly sets up our winner's winning narrative. But in this season, this iconic moment was skipped, but in an unusual way. Several girls were chosen to move on, and a group of girls were chosen to not move forward, as with any casting episode. 14 girls were chosen to not move forward, while the other girls were excited to move forward to the next round of casting. 14 girls who were not advancing were brought to a room to go home, but were met by Tyra and told that they would have to go home, but wouldn't have to go far because they were already home. Gotcha, bitch. The 14 girls were actually the chosen top 14 cast and were tricked as a fake out casting stunt as a prank to teach them. It's a fucked up prank. A prank to teach the models a very emotionally taxing lesson about handling rejection. On camera, the unlucky group celebrated making it and were whisked away, while the devastated actual finalists were left in tears but brought into the competition. The fate of the other girls, the ones that were misled into celebrating, was never shown, which immediately sparked a little bit of controversy. Despite how cruel and scripted this twist appeared, evidence has come out that these were real aspiring models. These were not actresses planted by production. I remember when this was airing believing that these were just hired extras. However, multiple sources, including girls who competed, confirmed that these were actual genuine auditionees who went through the casting process. 3 of the semifinalists themselves came out in 2021 to confirm that all the semifinalists were real and none were planted by production. In this interview, it was revealed that the girls who thought they were chosen were loaded onto a bus and made to wait for hours, believing that they were headed to meet Tyra as real contestants. Eventually, a producer came on the bus to reveal the truth and that they had not been selected. That is fucked up. This apparently led to chaos among the girls who were furious about being tricked in this way. I'd be pissed too. From a show that has provided us with a plethora of fucked up moments, this by far tops the list of cruel moments, in my opinion. I don't know how much Tyra and these producers were hemorrhaging money, but maybe we could have cut out this cheap, tacky intro scene and used whatever money was spent on this and given like $25 to like 15 girls from the mall and called it a day. Because Jesus Christ. Cycle 17 Kayla was eliminated for leading a revolt about their treatment. So by the time of the unmitigated abomination that was Cycle 17 All-Stars, Angelique claimed in a future lawsuit that the models were forced to work 16-hour days with minimal breaks, sometimes isolated for 5 to 6 hours without food and water, not being fed from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., only given food after one model spoke up to protest. Angelique even claimed that medical attention was withheld during someone's panic attack. This is the context where rumors of a contestant revolt emerged. Within fan communities, a theory took hold that Kayla and Bianca banded together to protest these poor conditions. Notably, when there was a double elimination in episode 7, both girls were sent home. According to later reports on Angelique's lawsuit, she claimed that the pair were eliminated because they led a revolt against production over mistreatment, ousting them from the competition as punishment. It is important to note that this claim didn't emerge during the time of the show's airing, but years later, as reported by media outlets like the Daily Mail within Angelique's lawsuit. Looking at how Kayla's elimination unfolded on TV, fans have pointed out inconsistencies that fuel the theory that it was more so narrative-driven or punitive. What raised eyebrows was that Kayla was clearly not the worst that week, especially over people like Shannon. Her edit portrayed her as having, quote, lost her spark after a health scare and struggling to stand out. So if Kayla indeed participated in challenging production behind the scenes, an audience didn't see that directly. Publicly, Kayla has never commented on this theory and kept very professional in her exit interviews during Cycle 17, probably due to the NDA restraints. Kayla pivoted careers and has since maintained a low profile. In short, no contestant has come out to specifically state that Kayla led a revolt during Cycle 17. This is mostly a theory from secondhand reports. Bianca and Angeli affirmed that their conditions were bad and that contestants pushed back, but they haven't explicitly pinned Kayla's elimination on in their own words, and neither has Kayla. So therefore this theory is more so generally speculative but leaning on the side of unproven. Paulina got fired for complaining about Tyra being late. Paulina Poroskova is a model from the 80s and 90s that took Twiggy's spot on the panel during cycle 10. She was let go after 3 cycles. In fact, she found out that she got fired over the phone on her birthday. Holy shit. This show claimed that Paulina was let go over budget cuts due to the recession. This was 2009, and that Tyra was incredibly saddened by the decision and loved working with Paulina. But according to Paulina at the time, she was told by producers that she had a ego problem, suggesting some behind the scenes friction. Yes, Paulina did publicly claim that her outspokenness against Tyra's habitual tardiness may have led to her getting fired. She accused Tyra of constantly being late to set, sometimes waiting 5 or 6 hours for her to show up. Ken Mock, an executive producer on the show, made it very clear that the firing was due to budget cuts and not an issue with the pair. Then comes the Nightline interview. Tyra sat down for a 2009 interview on Nightline that same year in a very awkward interview where she was asked about the firing, and Tyra stared at the interviewer, awkwardly refusing to comment with a fake smile, with Tyra's publicist having to come off screen and inform the interviewer that Tyra wouldn't be answering that question and they needed to move on. This did not make Tyra look good. There technically is no concrete smoking gun evidence from a third party to confirm this rumor, so we have to rely on Paulina's word and interpret the context. It is wildly believable, though. Victoria's Cycle 9 turned around and asked the girls if she was prickly at panel, and they all said no. In Cycle 9, Victoria, a Yale student, had a tense judging panel with Twiggy. On air during episode 4, Victoria had to pose as a cactus. Twiggy stated she found it fitting because she found her quite prickly, and Vicky bust that mouth open and checked her and said, "Let's get one thing straight, I don't have a prickly disposition." Gag it. Now that rumor goes that Victoria, in an effort to further check Twiggy, turned around and to the other 10 girls, people that, she lives with and knows for more than an hour every 3 days, and asked them if she was prickly, and they all answered no, but it was edited out of the episode because it would curb that narrative. Victoria herself has publicly confirmed that this happened, but in a little different way. In post-show interviews, she actually claims that the tense back and forths with Twiggy was largely editing. According to Victoria, they didn't really bicker that much, and that after the episode aired, a couple girls, including Jenna, spoke to her and said that the interaction never occurred that way, and it was edited on TV, and she wasn't snapping at anybody during that, when that happened. In an interview with the college blog Ivygate, Victoria claimed that Tyra called her a rude/prickly girl at panel, which prompted Victoria to turn around and poll her peers. She asked the girls, Raise your hand if I'm rude or prickly. And no one raised their hand to agree. So then she said, raise your hand if I'm not rude. And every single girl raised their hand in support of Victoria. They all said it. They all raised their hand. This bold boss ass move completely contradicted the judges and flustered Tyra. Victoria confirms that this moment is 100% real but never aired. She explained that Tyra lost a lot of face when the model sided with Victoria, and thus Tyra insisted it be cut from the episode, probably because it made her look bad. This is a common trend with Top Model. The show wanted to portray Ivy League Victoria as the brainy but obstinate contestant that doesn't take feedback well, and wanted to clip her and further humble her to maintain judging authority. Allowing footage of her calmly and easily clearing the fuck out of Tyra and dissolving the prickly narrative would have conflicted with her concocted bad attitude storyline. This clever bit of manipulative editing ensured that Cycle 9's story for Episode 4, Victoria the Prickly Know-It-All versus Sweet Twiggy, remained intact even if it wasn't the truth. The Cycle 21 Final Four guest shoot wasn't social media voted because they finally wanted a way to get rid of Lennox and get a guy winner. So this was a bunch of bullshit, okay? During the fan voting era, the fans could score the model shots during the filming of the show. Their scores would be factored into the judging score as it aired. Lennox during that season was a fan favorite with consistently high fan vote scores throughout the season. She was a front runner in multiple weeks. Besides the Spider Week, but that's whatever. Given that Tyra's favorite Manaconda Marvel, Keith, often had lower scores than Lennox, a fan vote could have really put Keith in jeopardy. Now, as the show was airing, we, the public, already saw these shots months ago, so we knew what shoots we were going to, expect. But in the Final Four episode, the guest shoot is noticeably a scored shoot that the public had never seen before because it wasn't included in the fan vote, meaning the judges exclusively decided scores for this round. This was extremely convenient for them to produce a way to get rid of Lennox, despite having really good shots this week. Tyra really wanted a guy winner in the first co-ed cycle the season prior, but Jordan was so fucking incredible with her 5 first call-outs that she completely eclipsed any opportunity for a guy to win. Tyra even told Jordan when she got crowned that I wanted a guy to win so bad. So it was clear that Tyra would probably do everything in her power to ensure that a guy won this time. And Tyra's sights were clearly set on Keith's crotch, someone she had a lot of favoritism for, sort of comparable to Celia on Cycle 9. But Keith had some mediocre fan votes and a few low performances compared to Lennox. Adam making it farther than Lennox was a complete joke, and I don't throw the word robbed around very often, but she was rigged and robbed. Tyra was gonna crown Keith's Manaconda if her life depended on it. Integrity be damned. So yes, this was because they wanted to get Lennox the fuck up out of there so they could give Keith's crotch that money. Lisa was the only one that did well in the photo booth shoot, so producers allowed the girls to reshoot and, quote, do what Lisa did. So in Cycle 5, the top 6 girls went to London as their overseas destination, and their first shoot abroad was posing together in a cramped red telephone booth together topless, because what else is British but that? Lisa was doing her big one on several occasions photographically on Cycle 5. The rumor in question is that Lisa did so well during this shoot that production allowed the other girls to reshoot or take extra frames after seeing Lisa's work, allegedly to give them a better chance at getting a competitive photo. This would be serious production interference if true, right? Well, Lisa herself, and please take this with a grain of salt because it's fucking Lisa. Lisa has openly confirmed the core details of this rumor from her perspective in a blog entry from way back in 2006. According to Lisa, she was the last of the 6 to shoot. And after she got done, Jay gathered the girls to explicitly praise Lisa's performance as the best, saying she did the best. and that she was so playful. Jay then told the other girls that they needed to, quote, pick up the pace to match what Lisa did, demonstrating facial expressions and poses, and then announced that all the girls would be getting extra frames except Lisa. Lisa was furious and felt it was unfair. Yeah. She cited this as evidence that the show was rigged, which is completely insane considering that she wins in semi-similar circumstances 6 years later, but whatever. On cycle 5, the judges admitted that she had a strong photo that week at panel, which it kind of has to be if they gave other people extra frames to 5 other people to mimic another person, but she was eliminated for supposed arrogance. This was mentioned in part 1, but Lisa's elimination on paper is complete bullshit. But the theory here is that Lisa was cut due to the diaper pissing incident a week prior, which was making her uncrownable in the eyes of sponsors, and the non-elimination, the London reveal, and claim of arrogance were all just cover-ups for the truth in a way that didn't break the fourth wall. None of the 5 other girls ever come out to refute or support this claim, meaning that the onus is on Lisa's account, which is shaky ground at best. But Lisa's story has not changed and was consistent over the years, even up until the Oliver Twist interviews. So the only account of this takes is Lisa's. So take that how you will. Kaylin had to pose in a grave the same week she found out her friend died. Oh, top model. It's funny how torture porn and high fashion can coexist marginally on a reality show. Of all the outrageous things that these girls have endured, nothing screams trauma is a ratings goldmine quite like what happened to Kaylin in Cycle 4 during Episode 9. So let's set this bad boy up. We just got off an explosive double elimination of Tiffany and Rebecca, which brought us from a top 9 to a top 7 1 week early. Just as Kaylin is dealing with the stress of this competition, she gets a call that her childhood friend had died in a car accident back home. Already introverted and emotionally reserved, Kaylin was grieving this news while also trying to navigate the high stress of this competition, only to find out that their photo shoot for this week would take place at a cemetery, and that they would have to pose at the bottom of an 8-foot grave. Now, was the graveyard shoot planned specifically to exploit Kaylin's grief? Short answer, it's highly unlikely. Hate to burst your bubble on that one. The long answer of it is that the logistics of ANTM's photo shoots are planned pretty well in advance to my knowledge. Like weeks, if not months. Remember, this is like a 2.5-month filming process. They're on a time crunch production-wise. This would conceive that the producers woke up one morning and said, Kaylin's friend just died, dig that shit tonight. No, like ANTM is a highly produced show, and the photo shoots require location scouting, permits, props. In this case, a grave. So you gotta get the plot in the cemetery again. You gotta pay the grave digger. Then you gotta get the photographer, clear a schedule, get the grave digger to dig the grave. It's several bells and whistles. So given the show's schedule and quick turnaround, it's unrealistic to think that they had time to change resources and, just to change a photo shoot just to match Kaylin's tragedy. However, lest we forget, this photo shoot had to be moved up a week because of the double elimination. The theme was 7 deadly sins, and last time I checked, 8 ain't 7, so there's no way they could have done this photo shoot in episode 9 had there not been a double elimination, which means if there was no double elimination, she wouldn't have done the 7 deadly sins shoot the same week her friend died. She would have just done it a week later, which is what happened to JL, but nonetheless. It's pretty much theorized that Tyra was never intending to eliminate Tiffany alongside Rebecca that night. That makes this seem like a tragic fluke rather than a disgusting setup. Also, it really needs to be said, Tyra was relatively compassionate to Kaylin's situation at panel. Tyra did tell Kaylin she didn't have to bring it up or even talk about it at panel, which is a rare moment of grace from Tyra, who is not only a host but an executive producer on a TV show. She could have milked Kaylin's grief far more than she did, honestly. She even scolded Janice a bit when Janice playfully was asking Kaylin what was wrong and she didn't understand why Kaylin was so upset. Let me preface this by saying, just because something is a coincidence doesn't mean it's not still exploitive in hindsight. No, I don't think that ANTM planned this shoot specifically because Kaylin's friend died. Sorry, torture porn enthusiasts. If that is true, Tyra is genuinely fucking evil and is gonna bust hell wide open. The logistics don't support that, and even Tyra doesn't have final destination abilities over people's lives, as far as I know. However, they still pushed Kayla to go along with the shoot despite grieving heavily, and didn't adjust the shoot for her benefit or offer her to skip the shoot, or at least not pose inside the grave, because, well, it did make great TV. And as a mental health professional myself, the respect for Kaylin as a human being for during all of this grieving that she's going through was and is unbelievable. Non-intentional cruelty, but prioritizing drama and narrative over a contestant's well-being. Very much so. Janice had a yeast infection. Sorry. Janice had a yeast infection and they freaked out whenever she set a panel without underwear. This one is such a big ass fucking lie, but it was thrown out alongside the passing out at panel one. So I genuinely believed it at the time because I didn't think that one was true, but that one was true. So I was like, okay, maybe this one is true, but this one is insane. So I'm going to replace this one with what is probably my favorite ANTM conspiracy of all time, which is Kenya invented the Mandela effect. How in the fuck did I forget this in the Iceberg? This one is crazy, okay? The situation highlights issues of entitlement and ignorance. So in cycle 4, the international destination was South Africa. The final 4 consisted of Britney, Naima, Kaylin, and Kenya. Earlier in the week, the girls participated in an African dance challenge in front of local members of the community. Kenya told the local dancers that she felt that she was at home in Africa and had much more of a connection to South Africa as the only black girl left in the competition. This remark completely dismissed the identity of Naima, who is biracial and half black, and she took offense to that remark on camera. This would foreshadow the confrontation of the episode. Kenya positioning herself as the authentically black representative of the group. The top 4 girls traveled to Robben Island, and a former prisoner served as a guide for a tour of the jail that held Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa and a huge activist against apartheid in the country. When the girls made it to Nelson Mandela's jail cell, the guide handed the key to somebody, and Naima just happened to be in front of him, so he handed the key to Naima to perform the honor of opening up the cell. This seemed to upset Kenya, who felt it was her birthright to open that cell door as the black woman in Africa. For clarity, Naima is also black, but Kenya said in a confessional that she, quote, didn't see Naima as black, which is so violently fucked up, but we will press on. Kenya was seen being very visibly emotional to the tour. I mean, who wouldn't? This is a very inspiring story. Crying as she was told about Nelson Mandela's struggles, and later was seen sulking that she didn't get the key to open up the cell. This would lead to a dramatic confrontation. On the bus ride home, there were some things going on at the dinner. Kenya didn't bring money to pay, and the other girls were not happy about that. But then it leads back to the argument earlier in the day where Kenya's continuing to sulk about the key situation, and it triggered Britney, who was Kenya's best friend in the competition, to call her out, and she snapped on her. Britney let loose on Kenya with a severe verbal assault, calling her selfish for making a fuss over the key. Britney pointed out the irony that Kenya had been praising Nelson Mandela's legacy when she had expressed earlier in the day that she didn't even know if he was alive or dead, which irked Britney and the other girls. You can see visible frustration from Zen Buddhist Naima, who's caught in the middle of it. When they get home, she slams the door, and sweet Kaylin, who's crying, but Kaylin cried about everything this cycle, so this really wasn't brand new. Now, as someone who is half black, it's very weirdly ignorant for Kenya to feel that she was more entitled to have the key to Nelson Mandela's jail cell than Naima, simply because she's biracial, and even more so due to the fact that she didn't even know that at the time Nelson Mandela was still alive in 2005. As people of mixed background, two things can be true at the same time. You can identify as two races separately and at the same time. You are not simply bound by the notion of being biracial with a period. It would completely erase your heritage and give you no claim to your identity whatsoever in either direction. You're not simply bound by the notion of being biracial with a period. Kenya's assertions that she was entitled to the honor because she was black and her unfamiliarity with Mandela's state of life at the time were central conflict for the episode. It's actually one of my favorite episodes of Top Model, probably in my top 3, particularly due to this tension and also for how horrifically backwards the call-out order is. It's actually the most backwards and frustrating call-out order of all time. I could write a thesis on it, and I have. But let's focus on the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect refers to the collective false memories. Named after the false memory some people have had that Nelson Mandela died in the 1980s. For most, it's misremembering that Kit Kat has no dash, or that the Berenstein Bears has an A in it, not an E, or that the Fruit of the Loom logo has no cornucopia, or that Curious George has no tail. This was a very big phenomenon in the 2010s. That's when I remember it first being coined or talked about. And in an almost too perfect alignment, Kenya in 2005 did exactly that. She acted as though Nelson Mandela might have died when in reality, he was very much alive at the time of this filming in 2005. Though the phenomenon mostly focuses on things people misremember, this situation actually involves the exact scenario that the term comes from. The term Nelson Mandela effect wasn't popularized until several years after this episode aired. Thus, the incident is remembered not only as reality TV drama, but as a darkly comedic coincidence. A Mandela effect about Nelson Mandela. It's crazy. The Mandela effect term wasn't coined until 2009 by a paranormal researcher named Fiona Broome. So, in a way, while it certainly isn't the first documented example of false memory, which is what the Mandela effect technically is, Kenya may have been the earliest documented example of the literal Mandela effect. The Mandela key incident of Cycle 4 endures as both a cautionary tale and a punchline. It's a cautionary tale in the sense of how it exposes underlying issues, the insensitive notion of one black woman's measuring another person's blackness, and the importance of cultural historical awareness even for young reality TV contestants. But also, it's ironic humor. The absurdity of model wannabes feuding over the key to Nelson Mandela's prison cell, and the poetic justice of Kenya manifesting the Mandela effect years before we even had a named coin for it. It'll be forever intertwined with the legacy of Nelson Mandela in a bizarre, unintended way. The Cycle 3 Japanese Customs prostitution fiasco. This was probably the wildest thing that came out of the 2020 era of ANTM behind the scenes tea spills from all the models during lockdown. I was gagged to find this out at the time. And by the time this had came out in 2020 or whenever it was, like, I found out about it, I'd been watching Top Model for about 15 years up to that point, so this was a gag. During Cycle 3, the girls went to Tokyo, Japan as their overseas destination. There was a long-standing rumor that when the girls got to Tokyo and were asked if they were there for business or pleasure, they didn't know how to answer because technically it was an overseas destination on a reality show, but at the same time, they're technically working, but they didn't know if that quantified as working. So it raised red flags with the immigration officials in Japan, so they were briefly detained. The story goes that they believed that they were under false pretenses coming to the country and might have even been sex workers. Anne later recalled that the Japanese customs officials, quote, could think of only one way to classify them. Quote from Anne, we looked like hookers, no doubt, which led to them being detained. At first, the girls thought that this might have been like a prank from production or maybe even a surprise challenge, but it quickly became clear that this was not a joke after the hours passed. Michelle, who we all remember from pinching Takara with industrial sized clips, the wardrobe stylist, who had trunks of clothes for their upcoming shoots, was denied entry into Japan and was actually sent back to the US. Seeing Michelle get sent back with a black mark on her passport made it very clear to the girls that this was not a stunt and this was a genuine international incident, not a challenge. And the Japanese authorities genuinely believed they came to Japan for sex work. To prevent the models from being formally detained, production intervened and quickly put them on a plane to Guam as temporary haven. The girls spent 2 days in Guam while production scrambled to get proper visas and paperwork so that they could re-enter Japan. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Miss J was waiting at the airport for the girls and had no idea why they never showed up. He later revealed that he was there for hours and that production forgot to tell him what was going on, and he was pissed. After resolving the paperwork after 2 days, the girls flew back to Japan and were allowed in without incident. This entire ordeal took 3 days. This situation threw production into disarray. J. Manuel had arranged an elaborate photo shoot for the top six to do immediately when they came to Japan, but the shoot had to be scrapped with the girls being in Guam. Apparently, it was a rather expensive shoot, and Jay was really upset that they didn't have the venue for it anymore. So instead, they had to tear down the set that apparently took a week for them to build. Instead, with the time and budget gone, the producers improvised a replacement shoot once they arrived, which would become the now infamous Campbell's Soup commercial in Japan. This extremely low budget ass commercial, which was deemed one of the worst of the show, where the girls had to speak in Japanese and sell Campbell's Soup. Jay confirmed that this was a direct result of the customs incident. The robes that they're wearing in it, they're from Jay's hotel. This entire thing was thrown together on the fly. Now, of course, the entirety of the customs fiasco, Michelle being sent back with the wardrobe, the Guam displacement, the torn down set, Miss J waiting at the airport, none of this was shown on TV and only comes from confirmed accounts afterward. Angeli was disqualified. This is bullshit. They were starved and deprived of sleep. Though this is a sort of semi-consistent claim for most reality shows in regards to extreme stress, many contestants have come out to claim that the show's conditions were deliberately engineered to break them down for maximum drama and emotional outbursts. Sarah from Cycle 9 claimed that while there was technically enough food in the house, it was sometimes intentionally limited. She stated that they only got paid $40 a day, which covered because they couldn't afford much on their own. She also claimed that they would delay meal and call times to agitate more breakdowns on camera. Angeli alleged that they were often left hungry and overfed. 4 hours, sorry, I had to do it, especially on challenge days. They didn't get catered food like craft services, as that was mainly meant for crew members. Sleep deprivation is more commonly reported as an issue, though. Cycle 5's Lisa, who I don't like, claimed contestants were kept awake for extremely long hours, waking up at 3 or 4 a.m. for challenges, with filming running late into the night. JL from Cycle 8 claimed that sleep deprivation was a big factor in her emotional struggles after the show, which could have potentially inadvertently contributed to her struggles with addiction in the later points of her life before she died. Rest in peace, JL. These aspects are common reality TV tactics to bring contestants to a breaking point. You would expect this more from Survivor than anything else, but these women were competing for survival. They were competing for a modeling contract, yet were subjected to similar conditions under the guise of being a modeling boot camp. April Cycle 2 and Nigel hooked up off camera because she looks like his wife. So anyone who watches Cycle 2 understood that there was a very interesting dynamic with April and Nigel. He was always so weirdly drawn to April on Cycle 2. There's a scene in Cycle 2 where the girls meet Tyra at a cafe at Top 4 where April admits that when the judges think that she's tense in the judging room, it's actually sexual tension with Nigel. Tyra says it's because April wants Nigel, and April admits yes. It's a little cringy because, he's married. She might have not known that at the time, but Nigel certainly knew that shit. April looks strikingly similar to Nigel's wife, and Nigel has this weird thing about his wife and her twin sister, and yeah. Nigel even remarked that April and Mercedes look like sisters at the nude shoot at Top 4, so yeah. Not when Nigel was supporting April that week, saying that he liked her strength in the competition at judging, Tyra jokingly replied, "You just like that ass." And Nigel says, "I do." Ugh. I mean, yeah. April has remained close to Nigel after the show to this day, but as overtly horny as this was, it seemed like a respectful dynamic to Nigel's marriage that just kind of towed the line of uncomfortable. But yeah, definitely creepy. Victoria took off her shoe to relax after being eliminated, and Tyra called security. Our favorite prickly Ivy League student has made yet another appearance on this list with another deleted scene from her legendary elimination episode. Victoria ended up getting the boot over Dora the Scandalicia Mushroom Explorer on episode 4 for her poor attitude over her photos. Her elimination seemed like any other until rumors emerged that off camera it was alleged that Victoria removed her uncomfortable high heels to relax after she was eliminated, and Tyra misinterpreted this as a hostile act, even calling in security. According to this rumor, Tyra summoned her bodyguard to intervene off camera as she perceived this shoe removal as an aggressive gesture. I want to make note briefly that Brie did the same thing when she got eliminated in Cycle 5, and it was actually a really beautiful moment. Like, she takes off her shoes and puts on her glasses, and she just, like, I think she pulls her hair down even, just to kind of just represent that she's going back to just be Brie after all this, and I love that. But this was not received nearly as well. Did Victoria confirm this wild incident? Indeed, she did. In the same Ivygate blog interview that confirmed the prickly poll of the girls behind her, Victoria addressed this rumor directly. Her account makes it clear that this was an overreaction from Tyra. She said, quote, "Yes, this did actually happen. I took off my shoes because my feet were numb and turning blue, but apparently Tyra was threatened by my 110-pound body of pure muscle and almost had her security guards jump me." Gag. Apparently, an insider mole from the show, perhaps an editor, was the one who leaked the story first, which was what prompted Victoria to be interviewed about it. This makes the rumor essentially true, as the producers never came out to deny the claim, which is wild. Amber Cycle 13 was sent to Top Model as a troll by 4chan. Who could forget crazy ass Amber from Cycle 13? That casting episode was drenched in holy water and religious psychosis on account of this one clown. This shit was like a cartoon. I failed to see how she passed the psyche val if they even conducted one. Amber gets confusingly cast on the show for some very strange reason because I do not see how she could possibly look good in pictures, but we were at the tail end of Top Model's credibility, so that'll do it. But then at the beginning of episode 2, we see Amber straight up vanished in thin air, like a dream last night. You sort of hold vague remnants as you've come down from a 102-degree fever. She's gone, and we replace her with Lisa. Now, where the fuck did Amber go? Where the fuck did Amber come from? And why the fuck was Amber let into the building? That's the mystery. With no clear explanation of why Amber departed, fans had to fill that hole in their brain themselves. I've heard many theories that she actually did fail the psyche val and they might have forgot to fax it over until the day after, that she had a severe eating disorder as she was reportedly only 95 pounds at the time, or even that her extreme religiosity and mental acuity was a liability for the show. How did she get through the door? A big rumor was that Amber was never a real contestant, but a deliberate plant or troll orchestrated by 4chan users. Amber would infiltrate as a prank. Her Jesus-loving persona was an act. The show discovered this mid-filming and removed her in a hurry. It kind of felt like a bad SNL skit or parody, and I loved it back then. I thought it was so stupid it was funny. But watching this today after working with psych patients as a living, it's like I would not want this person exploited on TV for hee-haws. That's just me. And maybe it's because I have a perspective as a mental health professional now. How many years after this aired? Like almost 20 years, 15 years after this is aired. Also, side point, lest we forget, Allison Harvard was a 4chan internet meme, so the theory isn't ridiculously far-fetched, but it's important to note that unusual behavior alone isn't proof of a hoax. Case in point, Jade. I remember back when people were looking for answers and it was discovered that Amber had a profile on an acting website called Explore Talent, and Allison was on the season prior, so that's what kind of crafted the 4chan theory, or maybe she was meant to be an insider for a parody video on Funny or Die when that was around. Who knows? It's important to note that Allison wasn't sent to Top Model by 4chan. She just happened to be a meme on 4chan, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this is but a rumor because no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to support it. There's never been a 4chan thread that shows this plot, nor was a Funny or Die video ever released involving Amber. No one in production has ever revealed by Amber departing, and that the closest thing we have is Jay stating that Amber would not be returning to the competition due to personal reasons. In 2021, in an interview with Oliver Twixt, is that how you pronounce that? Amber revealed that the reason she left was because she was suffering mentally and physically during filming. She became paranoid and stopped eating properly due to her anxiety and weighed around 90 pounds. Amber said she and her mother felt that it'd be better for Amber to leave for her health, but the producers urged her to stay. So Amber voluntarily left Cycle 13 due to a mental health crisis, not being a troll contestant. The troll theory is just an intriguing what if that is completely not substantiated by facts. And this kind of ties into a whole different angle of when does reality TV become exploitation? But appreciate you, Amber. Krista was the one who told producers about Angelique's escorting past. Cycle 17 All-Stars ended in controversy when Angelique was suddenly disqualified after the final runway. It's since become well known that during the original filming, Angelique was crowned in Greece at the finale over Allison and Lisa. Crazy. But she was then disqualified after filming and shortly before cycle 18 started filming. The final judging was reshot, and they crowned Lisa over Allison. Double crazy. At the time, we were told vaguely during the finale that she was disqualified over information that the producers learned about Angeli, which disqualified her. We later found out post-show that Angeli was disqualified due to having a past in sex work as an escort. Now, my feelings on how fucked up that is, for the fact that A, there was no good goddamn reason why Angeli should have even been crowned over Allison in the first place, but B, that Angeli didn't deserve to lose simply due to her past as an escort. But the question comes in with, how did the producers find out about this piece of Angeli's past? And one theory has emerged that comes from a former friend of Angeli's, a former winner. Angeli was technically a three-time contestant. She appeared on Cycle 12 where she didn't make it past semifinals, and then she was brought back for Cycle 14 where she made it onto the show and finished in joint third place. She developed a very close relationship with Krista, the eventual winner of Cycle 14. Fans began speculating from rumors later that Krista was the one who informed producers about Angeli's secret escorting past, which then got Angeli disqualified post-filming Cycle 17. The narrative painted Krista as a supposed snitch who betrayed Angeli out of malice, particularly because Krista's name appears on Angeli's lawsuit. Here's the truth. In 2022, Angeli gave a detailed interview in which she and Krista both discussed the events involving the disqualification. These accounts confirm that Krista did contact top model producers about Angeli's situation, but it was done out of concern and friendship, not malice. According to Angeli and Krista's testimony, after Cycles 14 ended, Angeli struggled to get modeling work and fell on very hard times. She began to be involved with a man who lured her into escorting and began abusing her, essentially trafficking her. During this period, some of Angeli's close friends became worried about her and contacted Krista. Krista was originally skeptical, but once she realized Angeli was in danger, she took action. Krista tried to rescue Angeli in Vegas, got her away from the trafficker, and got in contact with Angeli's sister to plead with her to leave the situation. Angeli wasn't ready to break free and advocated to return. In desperation, Krista reached out to anyone she could for assistance, so she contacted Top Model Production and affiliates to raise an alarm. She said she emailed, called, and informed them about her situation in hopes that they could intervene. A few people responded saying that they would do what they could, but ultimately no one in power took action to assist Angeli. Krista stated that she was very disappointed that Tyra didn't take action personally to help Angeli. This occurred around 2010, so Krista nor Angeli herself had any idea that Angeli would be brought back for Cycle 17 All-Stars, nor that she would win the competition. Krista's intention was to save her friend, not to rat her out or even inadvertently try to fuck her over like Elise did to Adrian in regards to her Wilhelmina contract. This drastically reframes the rumor. Far from betraying Angeli, Krista was one of the people who actively tried to help her escape abuse. Of all the blackface and body shaming and fake kente African hats, this is probably the darkest thing ANTM ever did. And though Angeli winning All Stars is an absolutely insane and cracked out decision, no one deserves to endure what she did, and the show built her up and knocked her down to put her through hell. She did not deserve that. Not for any aspect of what she did in her past. Especially for it to simply just be sex work. Natalie Cycle 12 versus Tyra's unaired fight. If you could give me a chance to see one unaired scene from all 24 cycles of Top Model, it would be this without question. During the top 6 episode of Cycle 12, an intense confrontation reportedly occurred between Natalie and Tyra at judging, but this never made TV. Celia later described this elimination as crazy and that it turned into, quote, kind of a screaming fight between Natalie and Tyra. When Tyra announced that Natalie was eliminated, multiple accounts say Natalie boldly challenged Tyra like a badass. According to multiple accounts, here were the points that Natalie voiced in frustration. 1. Calling out the judges. She confronted each judge one by one. She accused Miss J of never providing a single bit of constructive criticism to help her improve her walk. She called out Nigel and Paulina for the feedback they gave her, also not being constructive enough, and then finally directed her anger at Tyra herself. Number 2, criticizing the photo shoots. Natalie specifically questioned the fairness of the color-themed beauty shoot, demanding to know why she was assigned the color orange, and bluntly called the entire concept stupid, S-T-U-P-I-D, stupid, implying that the creative direction was poor or set her up unfairly. I personally disagree because I love that shoot, but go off, girl, because I'm still living. And number 3, challenging the process. In the heat of the moment, Natalie defended her performance by pointing out a perceived miscommunication in the production. She explained that Mr. J had her hold the same pose throughout the Carmen Miranda shoot, suggesting it was unfair for the judges to criticize her lack of variety or performance given those instructions. Tyra immediately shot this down during panel, refusing to accept the excuse. Natalie later said that the way Tyra dismissed her claim seemed very, very shady, and she felt the judges assumed she lied about Jay's direction. Now, what did Tyra say to this Rancho Cucamonga gossip girl challenging her authority and checking her at her own house? By reports, she did not remain passive and matched her intensity with ferocity, standing her ground. As soon as Natalie began airing her grievances, Tyra immediately pushed back, and according to onlookers, it quickly escalated into a heated shouting match. Celia recalled that both women were yelling, and that Foe said that the moment had her clutching her pearls because of how confrontational it became. Foe even recalled that Tyra's demeanor felt very similar to how laser-eyed she was with Celia earlier in the cycle when she tried to call out Talia, except with yelling. Jay Manuel confirmed it happened, as well as Amina as well. All these accounts piece together a clear picture of what allegedly unfolded. Upon her elimination with nothing left to lose, Natalie challenged the fairness of the judges, the show's methods, and the process in an emotional tirade. Tyra responded with equal fire, and it was later cut from broadcast. Now, my only standing is that this was cut mostly due to the fact that Natalie challenged Tyra's authority, which is a big no-no. Similarly to why Victoria's 2 incidences during her elimination in Cycle 9 were cut as well. Anything that makes Tyra look not godlike or doesn't fall in line with her persona on the show, can't see it. This was by far the most dramatic off-camera moment that we're ever aware of on the show, with Natalie effectively doing what few others have dared, standing up to Tyra Banks to her face. And I gotta give her 10. Shout out to Natalie for having that dog in her to the very bitter end. And now for what I personally believe is by far the worst behind-the-scenes Tom Allen moment of all time. You can go back to your house and sleep on your mattress on the floor with your baby. I gotta cut off the creepy background music off for this one. Tom Arnold has had many ugly moments, but this is by far, without question, the ugliest ANTM related thing I've ever heard. We all know the Tyra versus Tiffany tirade that became almost synonymous with Tom Arnold, and it is the show's most notorious moment. There's a running theme of many of the show's worst moments being toned down or edited in order to protect Tyra's image or to protect her persona. In recent years, a rumor has emerged that during the iconic meltdown, Tyra went even further than what we saw, allegedly telling Tiffany, quote, "You can go back to your house and sleep on the mattress on the floor with your baby." Now, let's dissect this. What's important? No broadcast footage or official transcript from this entire scene contains that line. The episode is as aired, did not make any comment about Tiffany's home or her baby. However, Tyra did attempt to guilt trip Tiffany's indifference to her elimination by bringing up the fact that Tiffany's grandmother almost had her lights turned off to buy her swimsuits for the competition. Tiffany herself revealed that the most personal and vicious parts of Tyra's rants were edited out. She said the confrontation in reality was, quote, 1,000 times worse than what we saw. The rumors of the mattress line came from Tiffany's accounts rather than an anonymous internet gossip. In a 2017 interview with BuzzFeed, Tiffany openly confirmed that Tyra did yell a version of that insult at her in front of everyone. According to Tiffany, when pressed for details, Tyra snapped something to the effect of, "You can go back to your house and sleep on your mattress on the floor with your baby." Tiffany, I can't stop saying that quote enough because it needs to be said. That is such a fucked up statement to say. And I can't let that not be forgotten. Tiffany would reiterate the point in a 2023 Entertainment Weekly feature, recalling, "She told me how I could go back and sleep on a dirty mattress with my baby. Of course, they didn't show that." Tiffany added that hearing that convinced her that Tyra didn't actually care about her, and that right there let me know that you weren't rooting for me. I was just a story. The little poor dirty girl from Miami. It turns out Tiffany wasn't the only one to mention the harshness of this tirade being worse than what we saw. Michelle from the same cycle revealed in an True Hollywood Story special that Tyra said something like, quote, "There's never been a girl I regret casting more than you," directed at Tiffany. A producer of the show, Heather Cox, revealed that Tyra and the producers were concerned about how the incident would look when it aired, so they orchestrated a meeting with Tyra's mom to damage control and smooth things over the next day with Tiffany at a hotel. So when Tiffany's getting eliminated, she says in her final exit interview, quote, "She cared about me." And knowing what we know, that was definitely done afterward and were not Tiffany's true feelings at the time. Because when Tiffany is packing her shit up, she's very, very angry. And rightfully fucking so. Tyra has never officially confirmed or denied that she made this comment. And when reached out to in the 2023 EW interview, she declined to comment. The silence on specifics, coupled with Tyra's general remorse at the fact that the tirade even took place these days, suggests an implicit acknowledgement that Tiffany's story, unfortunately, has truth to it. Tyra did make this very disgusting comment, or something very similar to Tiffany, during the tirade, albeit off camera, corroborated by those who experienced it firsthand. There are people that have come out and have since decided to take aspects of the show at face value and make videos and all these other things to try to exploit the show for their own personal views or their own gain, or say things that they don't know the full story to, or try to paint this entire show as a thing that was completely negative for women when that is not the case. Someone who is probably the one show that I've been dedicated to the most of my entire life. I've been watching since I was 7 years old. The show had a lot of negatives to it, but the intention wasn't always negative from the beginning. All reality shows are evil to some degree in its production, in the back end of it, behind the scenes. But with the truth of it, Tyra's vision in the beginning was to support a vision of beauty that wasn't just the typical, that wasn't just what you were seeing on those runways, and that there was beauty in women, and she wanted to be able to give an avenue for women who did not have a pathway in normal directions that you would see. That being said, Tiffany's elimination is cited as the prime example of Tyra's toxic desire to teach a lesson that turns into public shaming. Disparaging a young woman in poverty crossed the line into cruelty. And to me, it is by far Tyra's worst moment on the show. Attempting to break a 20-something-year-old mother who is poor and completely tarnishes the Cinderella narrative that a modeling contract would change their lives forever and they'd be successful and rich and they'd never struggle again. that the show tried to concoct so glamorously in its run was just at best a creative, entertaining, and pretty fucked up facade.